Welcome to the latest episode of the Catalyst Health and Wellness Coaching Podcast. My name is Brad Cooper, and I will be your host. And folks, we just recorded our 50th episode. 50? I am so grateful to our incredibly gracious, insightful, and I think you'd agree, interesting guests who have helped make this a reality. And thank you to you for joining us, for spreading the word, for being so nice on the iTunes reviews. It's making a difference, and we really appreciate it. If you weren't there, it's all a waste of time. Now, I had no idea what was involved when we first started this journey. So thank you for hanging in there with me while I'm kind of been learning along the way. The time commitment, it takes about 6 hours for each episode. Definitely surprised me. But based on your feedback, based on the growth of the audience, it looks like it's been a worthwhile journey. So again, thank you. Thank you for being a part of it. The goal of this episode is a little different. The goal here is to provide you with a very brief overview of those first 50 episodes. I want to save you the time of reading through all the descriptions or which ones you'd like to go back and hear again. But this is going to be quick, so hang on tight. We're just trying to do a cursory overview here. If you'd like, you can review all the descriptions, or if you hear something that I mentioned here and then you're like, wait, which one was that? I'll try to cross-reference with dates so you can go back and see, or in order on the website. There are dates on iTunes. They're in order on the website. And that is available at catalystcoachinginstitute.com. There's also a link to iTunes on there. As always, feel free to reach out to us anytime. Results@catalystcoachinginstitute.com. And if you've been pondering the Wellness Coach certification, our last fast track training of 2019 is November 9th and 10th in Colorado. Now, let's jump into our first 50 Turbo Speed overview. All right, the first episode, August 13th, 2018, the 4 C's of Health and Wellness Coaching. That was our introductory session. It set the tone. And if you're a coach, that would be a great one to go back and hear. Speaking of which, the next episode, episode 2, August 17th, was a really interesting interview with 2 people that are part of the National Wellness Coaching Certification, have been involved with the questions, and really walk through what does that all mean? Where are we going with this? How does the exam work? That kind of thing. In the third episode on August 20th, we talked about the evidence-based coach. That's one that you're going to hear a few times. And the real focus of this is how do we bring the evidence into health and wellness? Health and wellness is unfortunately covered with all sorts of fads and headline chasing and all that. And so every so often we bring the research. What is the research saying? Not what does the headline say, not what does the latest tweet say, but what is the evidence saying? And this one specifically looked at sleep, exercise, and some of the mental health issues. The fourth episode, August 24th, was what it's really like to be a health and wellness coach. We had 2 nationally board certified health and wellness coaches who came into the studio and talked about it, shared their ideas, how they got to be coaches, where that came from, what they've learned, some of the struggles, some of the things that they've learned along the way. So that's a really good one if you've been pondering that area. The September 16th, the 5th episode, was an interview with a long-time, 30-plus year human resource vice president talking about health and wellness coaching, how to integrate all those things together into an employer setting. So pretty intriguing if that's your area of expertise. The next episode, we brought in 2 physical therapists. And if you're a clinician, nurse, counselor, physician, PT, etc., the September 26th episode is episode number 6, would be a wonderful one for you to jump into and get a sense of how are they integrating this into their practice versus just doing it as a separate entity, which is where probably most of the folks listening are integrating it. In the next episode, this is October 4th, number 7, it's financial fitness for health and wellness coaches. So this is fitness tips. How do you get your arms around this? One of the biggest things with health and wellness coaching is if you put in too much overhead into your process, you have no shot. If you have too much debt coming in, you can't make it. And so we walk through a lot of the financial fitness pieces that can help you with those aspects, applicable to anyone. It's in the context of health and wellness coaches, but anyone in any situation will garner some benefits from that one. Our 8th episode was about integrating your fitness industry career with health and wellness coaches. We brought in 2 folks that are in the fitness industry, and they talked through, similar to what we did with the health and wellness coaches earlier. These are 2 people that are in fitness industry, but are also health and wellness coaches. And they talk through, how do those things link up? How do they go back and forth? How do they work in tandem? Those types of things. The next episode, episode 9, October 18th, this was health and wellness in the classroom. A 4th grade teacher came in studio and talked about her experience and how she integrates in practical ways health and wellness into her classroom in a way that kids love it. Like, the stories she shares are just so much fun. We actually did that as a flashback episode later on. So that's a fun one. And it's very applicable to kids in general. So not just for teachers out there, but for parents that are trying to figure out, how do I make this fun for my kids? How do I make this a real thing? That's a great opportunity. On October 26th, our 10th episode, we gave you an opportunity to listen in live to a coaching session, a real coaching session. Not a scripted session, not a, make sure you cover this or that. Literally, we just turned on the microphone and let it go. And if I remember correctly, I think this was, yes, I'm looking at the description here. This was actually me being coached. I was the first guinea pig. So if you want to hear the real Brad Cooper and the things that I'm struggling with, there's your chance. So let's move on from that one as quick as possible. On November 2nd, in our 11th episode, the author, best-selling author, and one of my favorites, Matt Fitzgerald, came on and talks about just all kinds of interesting things. Matt's the author of a number of books, but some of my favorites, How Bad Do You Want It? The 80-20 series. He really gets into all of these aspects that he's written about and how it applies to us in our health and wellness pursuits. On November 11th, our 12th episode, we had Laura Henneland talking about practical mindfulness. Mindfulness is a big topic. You're hearing it everywhere. And last November, we brought that into this context, and how can we be applying this in our daily lives? So if you're trying to get your arms around mindfulness, what does it mean? I remember walking away from that one thinking, wow, I thought I knew mindfulness. I didn't know mindfulness. So really good stuff on that one. On number 13, Lucky 13, November 21st, we had Jen Liddell join us, and she talks about, again, bringing back to the organizational setting. She's a wellness coordinator in an organization. How does she encompass all these aspects? How does she incorporate her skills? What are the critical things when you're overseeing a wellness program, and what does that look like? On November 29th, our 14th episode, we had a sleep specialist, Dr. Amy Bender, join us on the show, and absolutely fantastic. Some excellent advice, very practical type things like the cognitive shuffle, the 4-7-8 strategy. So that's one. If sleep is an area that you're really focusing on, do not miss that one. On the, 15th episode, December 9th, we had a counselor who's also a coach talking about what is the role of coaching. What's the role of counseling? How do they work together? What are key differences? What does scope of practice look like? All those types of things. The following one, December 26th, we wrapped up the year. It was our last one of 2018, talking about creating, identifying, clarifying a personal vision to drive your goals. Don't just set goals. And that's one of the things I see over and over. People know about setting goals. They forget to identify the vision first. And if you do that effectively, it goes so much further. So if that's something you're looking at, that might be at any time of the year. That might be one you want to jump back into. Our first episode of 2019 was Dr. Tanya Holliday, and she talks about fad-free nutrition and weight management. Great episode. Really, again, we've really focused on practical advice, and she nailed it. The following episode, we brought in some of the business stuff. For the coaches out there, January 16th episode, Jeff Kemp from Campfire Digital came in and talked about digital marketing. What do you need to be doing? Where do you not need to be spending your money? Where do you need to be spending your money if you want to develop your business in that way? Our third episode of 2019 on January 22nd, Dr. Alex Hutchinson joined us. Again, one of my all-time favorite authors. He's written the book Endure, and so good. I'll just leave it at that. If you haven't read his book, get it. So many intriguing, just key elements that you're not going to want to miss. And the interview, he was fantastic. On February 4th, Evidence-Based Coach came back. We talked about self-talk, mood states, self-efficacy, and psychological stress. And the evidence, not just the headlines behind each of those things. On February 12th, we brought back in the fifth episode of 2019 another unscripted, I want to stress, these are not scripted. These are just live, let it go, see where it goes, coaching sessions. And Sabrina did this one, did a fantastic job. Really, it's just intriguing to hear that stuff happen live. Our sixth episode, February 21st, was multiple-time Ironman world champion Chrissy Wellington. Chrissy, just fantastic. She gets into a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff that maybe you weren't aware of. You've got this world champion who is willing to share her struggles with eating disorders and what she's doing with that. But you also see performance areas, things around this concept of smiling in the midst of competition, and what does that mean for our daily lives as well. So that was, for me, a really fun one to jump into. On March 4th, episode number 7 of 2019, Dr. Carla Mahan joined us. The focus, we talked about a lot of things, but the focus of this one was on challenge and threat and the difference between the two and what that might mean in both your coaching and what you're doing in your own life. So again, that one just had so many practical applications, and yet at its core, it's the evidence. On March 11th, we brought back one episode, our first throwback, our first flashback of what it's really like to be a health and wellness coach. That was one of our most popular that we'd had the entire time. And so again, that was episode number 4 originally. We brought it back as episode 8 on March 11th, 2019. And interestingly, it had a lot of listens round 2 as well. On March 18th, episode number 9 of 2019, Suzanne Brown talked to us about practical nutrition and what you can do in your own life to integrate these key pieces. On March 25th, episode number 10, best-selling author Brad Stulberg. And this guy's good. If you're not following him on Twitter, if you haven't read his book, jump on it. Brad Stulberg. But he talks about the passion paradox and the original meaning of passion and how we've kind of gotten off track with that and how you can integrate those key elements in your life. On April Fool's Day, just by coincidence, episode number 11, we were so fortunate. We had the executive director and the director of operations of the MBHWC. For any of you out there who are pondering pursuing your health and wellness coaching national board certification, don't miss that one. This is the organization that runs the show. So they get into a lot of insights about where's the profession going, how do you get ready for this stuff, what are certain things you need to do to prepare, and on and on. Episode number 12 on April 8th. I really enjoyed this one I'd been looking forward to for a long time. Rachel Cruz joined us. Now, if you don't know Rachel, and hopefully you do, but she's the daughter of Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University. And so their entire organization is about practical finances, how to pull in ways of getting out of debt in a real world situation, not this high and mighty stuff, but literally what are some specific steps you can take? And she did a wonderful job laying that out for us in that episode. On April 15th, our 13th episode, Chris Hughes talked about strategic planning and how to incorporate that into, if you're pursuing coaching, specifically, we talked a lot about that, but in any area of your life, and especially any business aspect that you're pursuing. On April 22nd, our 14th episode, I was interviewed on a different podcast by Dr. Ian Dunican, and he was kind enough to allow us to publish that in our own podcast. And so that's actually ended up being one of the most popular episodes. Thank you. I guess there's some interest in that topic out there somewhere. But that's all about mental toughness and its application and how we can pull that in. Not just the old school mental toughness where you grit your teeth and you get back out on the field. I don't care if your leg's broken. But how does it apply to every one of us, no matter where we are and what we're pursuing? April 29th, our 15th episode, is currently our number 2 all-time, only behind Chrissy Wellington, Ironman World Champion Chrissy Wellington. That episode was Dr. Meeta Singh. She is a sleep doctor to some of the world's greatest athletes: basketball, football, hockey, baseball. And she was so gracious. She stuck around and shared so much great information. There's a good reason why that one shot to the top. Our 16th episode on May 6th was our second throwback or flashback episode. The school one, the 4th grade teacher talking about real life with kids in school settings or parent settings ended up being so popular, we said, better bring that one back. So that made a return on May 6th. On May 13th, our 17th episode, Dr. Nancy Guest talked about personalized and actually genetic-based nutrition. And what's going on with that? And how does that all work? May 20th, 18th episode, Dr. Alan Castell, who's the best-selling author of Successful Aging, also a professor at UCLA, took a deep dive into that very topic. How do we age successfully? What does it mean as far as supplements? What does it mean as far as crossword puzzles and all those kinds of things? What can we really be doing to age successfully? On May 27th, episode number 19, Dr. Alan Lim joined us. He is a fueling coach for some of the world's greatest athletes and the founder of Scratch. Wonderful interview, a lot of insights, and frankly, some insights into some of the athletes that he coaches and what he's learned through them and what they've learned through him. Our 20th episode, June 3rd, any of the runners out there will love this one. You will soak this in. It'll be your favorite of all time. It is the one and only Bart Yasso. Yeah, you've heard of Yasso 800s. He was the chief running officer for Runner's World. He's known as the mayor of running. He laughed about that, but he's the guy. When it comes to running, he's seen it all. He's done it all. And again, if you're a runner, I think you'll have fun with that one. Our 21st episode, June 10th, Christy Anschwaden joined us, and she is the best-selling author of Good to Go. And she talks about all these recovery tools that people are using that don't generally work. Like there's a whole industry on recovery tools, how to recover faster. And she goes into the details of which ones actually make a difference and which ones probably not so much. On June 17th, our 22nd episode of 2019, and our 38th overall, we had Ken Hola join us. He is a 75-year-old who completed the Hawaii Ironman World Championship, and he gets into what's it like to be 75, now 76, and to be able to compete at those levels. And so interesting. Whether you're a triathlete or not, doesn't matter. He's talking about living your best life regardless of age, and really some neat insights there. On June 24th, we had our 23rd episode of 2019. It was a third sample coaching session. These turned out to be incredibly popular. I don't know if it's just you're curious what other people have going on in their lives, or you're wanting to hear how does this coaching thing work. But in any case, these are always a big hit, and this one was no exception. July 1st, our 24th episode, we had our third throwback episode of all time, and we brought back Matt Fitzgerald, who I mentioned earlier. Outstanding one. Catch either one of them, you'll be glad you did. On July 8th, episode number 25 of 2019, Nancy Clark, very well-known author. She's written for all sorts of Runner's World. She's got several books out. And again, she gets into, and I love this, the evidence-based practical side of nutrition. There is so much junk out there. And I don't just mean all the baloney that you're seeing on shelves. I mean the headlines, the things people are pushing at you. Folks, get back to the basics, and she really did a good job of helping us with that. On July 15th, episode 26 of 2019 and episode 42 overall. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, the Chief Medical Officer for Virgin Pulse, joined us. A lot of insights about coaching, the future of coaching, and just behavior change in general. Our 27th episode of 2019 on July 22nd with Joe Friel. He's the co-founder of Training Peaks and the author of Fast After 50. That rocketed. I thought it'd be popular, but it immediately rocketed up into our top 3 or 4 episodes of all time within, 8 days, I think. So if you're interested in performance after the age of whatever, his book is 50 plus, but it applies to essentially 30 plus. So if you're into that stuff, definitely one you want to check out. That was episode 27 of 2019 and dated July 22nd. July 29th, the 28th episode of the year, was David Epstein. And just for me personally, one of my all-time favorites. He's the author of The Sports Gene. He's the author of Range. And I love the book. I just finished it when we set up the interview. And just fascinating. We hear so much about specialization and how important it is to be a specialist and the 10,000-hour rule and all those kinds of things. And David takes the opposite approach and provides the research behind it. So really interesting. That's the July 29th, 2019 episode. On August 5th, our 29th episode of the year and 45th of all time, Dr. Kenneth Pelletier joined us. He talked about epigenetics. And I didn't even know what epigenetics were until I heard him speak at a conference where we were both speaking. And it's fascinating because what it gets into, yes, genes do matter, but they're not your destiny. And he goes into how behavior, in many cases, is a much, much bigger factor than our genes. The August 12th episode, 2019, was the 30th episode of the year. It's a return to evidence-based coaching, and it gets into multiple research highlights of things that, again, you're hearing the baloney out there, you're hearing the fads. We get into the details. The 32nd episode and 48th overall, Dr. James Hamblin. I literally just finished recording this one, and it's so interesting. He's a physician. He's written a wonderful book on If the Body Could Talk, and he gets into all those questions that you wish you could ask. You get your answer. Our 49th episode, September 2nd, number 33 of 2019. This is the one we get into the latest heart study on masters endurance athletes. There's a lot of chatter out there about the dangers, potential dangers of endurance sports. And so we brought in Dr. Barry Braun and soon to be Dr. Nate Bachman to talk about the study that they just are wrapping up now that looked at this exact issue of, is endurance athletics dangerous? And I think you'll find it fascinating. And then finally, number 50, good timing, September 9th, number 34. This is Brad Barton. He is a 53-year-old who just ran a 4:19 mile. And that's without roller skates, folks. 4:19. He's 53. Crazy. But we get into it. So there you have it. Our first 50 episodes. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Whether you joined us from the very beginning and you've heard every single one, or you just pick out a few topics here and there, or if today's your first one, we appreciate you being a part of the Catalyst team. You can check out the descriptions and obviously access them all as well at catalystcoachinginstitute.com. So if I flew through it too fast or you weren't in a place you could jot down a certain episode, that's an easy place to go back and check them out. Thank you for being a catalyst for better. That's the key. You hear a lot about this idea of best self in our industry, but sometimes that just feels out of reach, like you don't even want to start. But better's one step away. So let's keep being a catalyst for better in our own lives, but also for those around us. We're always here if you need anything. Results at catalystcoachinginstitute.com. Make it a fantastic rest of the week, and I'll speak with you soon on the next episode of the Catalyst Health and Wellness Coaching Podcast.